Stay tuned for tonight's adventure with the Fat Man.
Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is. I hope it's good to be where you are because I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Baltimore Fats, and this is Sophie's Choice. Yeah! All right, guys, have fun. All right, so we're rounding third in our story of the ladies and the tableau parties of 1870-ish, right? And Amy Darcy Wetmore here is getting ready to serve one of them up to me on a silver platter in this article. Mrs. William Reed. But before she does this, she throws yet another curveball at me in the form of Mrs. William Reed. And so let me explain what I mean by this. Right? In this article, right after she talks about all the extravagant celebrations of the bygone era, right, she continues that among the women, Mrs. William George Reed played a most significant part. She was Miss Waters, and her first husband was Mr. Charles Howard. After his death, she married Mr. William George Reed. And so these three sentences are loaded with information, right? The first bit of information is that there are two phonetically similar but two very different Mrs. William Reeds creeping around these parties, right? We have R-E-E-D and then we have R-E-A-D. That couldn't have been confusing at all. Mrs. William Reed and two people turn around, right? So that's really kind of incredible. But Amy also lets us know that this William George Reed, R-E-A-D, she was Miss Waters, suggesting to me that that's her maiden name. And she goes on to say that her first husband was Mr. Charles Howard. And here we've hit the jackpot, right? We finally have a Howard in this story after all this time. Which is really amazing considering how important the name is. It's hard to have a bigger name in this town than Howard. Carol or Calvert might be it. Right? And so for them to be no-shows as people in the story so far has really been really interesting considering the way the shadows of Howard's woods loom over this story. Right? It's really kind of incredible. And the idea of Baltimore or Maryland being a royal forest may not be so far off the mark when we find that back in the days of Elizabeth's court, the first Earl of Nottingham was Charles Howard. So a central figure in those transition courts of the Tudors into the Stuarts, just as Leonard Poe was, right? And so I think it's, really incredible that he's the Earl of Nottingham and the Howards go on to be the proprietors of Howard's Woods, right? And then go on to the theater, which could extend all the way to Ron Howard and his Imagine Entertainment group today. Though I did find out that the Howards here, they changed their name from something else. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head, but Ronnie Howard's father changed his name to Howard. But that doesn't really mean anything because there could be Howard blood in the line, which makes the name change to Howard. Makes sense. And I'm digressing here, and there's a lot more to get into with Chucky Howard, right? But this is about the ladies, right? And the lady in question here is Mrs. William George Reed, whose first name Amy doesn't tell us. And so I figure the easiest way to learn that is through her big fish first husband Chuck here. And so here we are at Charles Howard's Genie page, and here's his picture, right? And of course, he's a member of the Hidden Hand, the way we were tracking them through the Poe Chronicles. And it says his birthday was April 26, 1802, and he dies on June 18, 1869, living to be 67. He's the last son of Governor and Colonel John Eager Howard of the Continental Army, and believe me, we're going to get more into the Howards as we go down the line, but it says that he was the husband of Elizabeth Phoebe Howard. And so now Elizabeths are like a dime a dozen, but Phoebe is kind of interesting. I don't see that name very often. So here I'm thinking we have his wife who Amy Darcy Wetmore's talking about, and I'm expecting that when I click on that, her maiden name is going to be Elizabeth Waters, and she's going to go on to marry one William George Reed. All right, so I click on it, and no, her maiden name is Key, as in Francis Scott Key, because she's his daughter, right? Daughter of Francis Scott Key, right? Wife of Charles Howard, right? And now look at the family that she and Charles Howard have. Being the good Catholics that they were, they just could not stop pumping out Confederate officers. No fewer than 4 of their children go on to be Confederate officers. This is really incredible. Charles Howard is imprisoned for a few years under charges of conspiracy to smuggle weapons to the Confederate States, among other charges. So this is really unbelievable. So the Confederate ties between the Howards and the Key family is really kind of amazing here. And seeing all of these Keys and Howards, in the family, right? And seeing some of these other names. Look, we have Arnold in here. There's a Morgan in here. Arnold and Keyes are definitely related. We have a Pendleton down here, right? So seeing these names and their ties to the Confederacy and their ties to loyalist parties during the Revolutionary War, it makes me wonder, how the heck did the Keyes and the Howards escape? How did they escape that anti-Confederacy cancel culture bonanza that happened a short while ago? Right? Maybe seeing these connections to the Confederacy, maybe it's time we should cancel the national anthem. I don't know, but it's very interesting that the Keyes have escaped this and the Howards have escaped this. But again, I'm continuing to digress here. I want to get back to the ladies because it's all about the ladies and it's all about Sophia Catherine Howard. And Sophia Catherine Howard Reed is the Mrs. William George Reed of Amy Darcy Wetmore's story, right? And she was never Chucky Howard's wife. She was his sister. In doing my due diligence on the Charles Howard Genie page and looking at the names of all the members of his family, I noticed that in his siblings, there was a Sophia Catherine Reed, spelled the same way. Right? And interesting also to note, like the Chew name here, although I didn't say it out loud in the Mishkianza episode, the Chews were loyalists. They were among those loyalist supporters who threw the Mishkianza, right? Or bought tickets to it anyway, right? And so, and also good to see the name Catherine here, giving me some hope that perhaps Mrs. Elder will, in fact, be a Katie. And so, of course, I had to click on it just to see, what the relation was, right? And sure enough, right, here we have daughter of Governor Colonel John Eager Howard, right? And wife of William George Reed. All right, great. Now I'm on to something, right? Who's William George Reed? All right, so I got who gots, right? They don't give me anything, right? Estimated birthday between 1770 and 1830. So 50-year span for his birthday, right? And that's it. They don't give me anything else. Other than that, he's the husband of Sophia Catherine Reed. But thankfully, Jeannie is not the only reference for Sophia Catherine Reed. She has a Find a Grave webpage that I used to make that slide. So her birthday is March 6th, which is an interesting date, right? 1800. And she died November 22nd. Also interesting numerically. All right, she lived to be 80. And so that would put her at like 71 years old at these tableau parties. And they have a little bio information. Not all the Find a Grave pages do. It corroborates the Jeannie page and says that she was in fact the daughter of Colonel John Eager Howard, but also that she was the widow of William George Reed. And this was taken from an obituary, I suppose, right? It says here that she marries William George Reed on May 27th, 1825, right? And he was born on September 11th, 1800, in Newport, Rhode Island. And he died April 7th, 1846. So he's dead some 25 years before these tableau parties. And so a couple of interesting things here, seeing this Newport, Rhode Island connection come in. And with Rhode Island being, the province of the Arnolds and the Arnold name, and Benedict Arnold playing the role that he's been playing, connecting him being Edgar Allan Poe's possible grandfather. It's just really kind of interesting to see this Rhode Island-Baltimore connection kind of tightening here around this William George Reed. But that's it. That's all I can find on him on the surface, is just this bit of information. But again, I think it's kind of very important. And so now we know who Mrs. William George Reed was, right? It's Sophia Catherine Howard. Here she is. And so the amazing thing about this is how does Amy Darcy Wetmore get this wrong? This seems like a really significant error. How does she mix this up? How does she mistake Catherine Howard for Charles Howard's wife and not her sister? And saying that after Charles Howard's death, she marries Mr. William George Reed when Charles Howard dies in 1869 and William George Reed in 1846 or whatever it was. I mean, this is, I don't know what to make of this. I mean, could it be that Amy's memory is that faulty in 1908? Because as I say, I really believe that she was at these things. Maybe dementia setting in, or maybe they just changed the script and just don't care that these types of inconsistencies are out there. Because again, who's looking for these things, right? 125 to 150 or more years after the fact in the case of these tableau parties. Especially seeing like the military ties to the to the Confederacy through the Howards and perhaps the Keys and their loyalist sympathizing relatives, the Chews. I mean, it's just, really kind of unbelievable. And it makes me wonder, who the heck is Miss Waters in all of this? Where did she come from? I don't know. But one thing that I do know is that Mrs. Reed was an exceedingly clever lady, right? And every entertainment conducted by her proved a success. Right? She loved theatricals and gave a number of performances in her own home, was also the leading spirit in many of the plays that took place at Elkridge, the Relay, and St. Denis. Now, I'm guessing these are early theaters, because if she's putting on performances in her home, this is making me think, and she's, born 1800, so this is pre-war era, 1830s, 40s, 50s doing this. And again, that's how this stuff was sort of introduced in these private parties of these, elite connected people, of these elite connected club members, and their associations to how they were really getting ready to manipulate people's minds and, be able to have societal control through culture and arts and entertainment. But of course, that's only just part of their plan, right? They have education and healthcare and so many other things brewing at this time. But clearly, Sophia Catherine Howard was a very important person in the development of theater in the mid-1800s in Baltimore. And who knows how important that role is bringing it out. As I say, I think a lot of this stuff was developed here and then introduced elsewhere, given the importance of some of these players, right? And so this is about it. This is about all I could really find on her, at least as far as the story goes. But one thing that was interesting, I thought, was that anytime I tried to Google her or DuckDuckGo or whatever I was trying to use, right, they always wanted me to look at Catherine the Great. She was a Sophia Catherine as well. And so it makes me wonder if perhaps there is some sort of tribute or some other connection here as to why she is Sophia Catherine and Catherine the Great. Although relatively contemporary, I would think, by dates here. Right? Catherine the Great was late 1700s. I wish I kind of looked at that before I clipped that picture. But anyway, so I'm going to wrap this one up here. I know I kind of said we were rounding third. I was hoping I could get to the final girl, but just kind of running out of time on this one. So we'll finish it up in the next family jumbling episode. So remember, guys, just because you don't know the truth doesn't mean you can't have fun with the lies, right? And so until the next one, cheers.